your wife. She's responding to all the
Oh, yes. Today's scripture is Nehemiah 2:17 and 18.
Then I said to them, "You see the trouble we are in, how Jerusalem lies in ruins and its gates burnt. Come, let us rebuild the wall of Jerusalem, so that we may no longer suffer disgrace." I told them that the hand of my God had been gracious upon me, and also the words that the king had spoken to me. Then they said, "Let us start building." So they committed themselves to the common good. Okay, let me first say this farm boy was a long way from home. So we flew into Abuja, which is the capital of Nigeria, which is right in the center of this map. We were greeted by church leaders of Atako, the Abuja congregation. We stayed overnight in a guest house at the church, and the next day we flew to Yola, which is the end of the black line on the eastern part of the country, about an hour's flight. We were met there by local church leaders from the Jamaica Church and leaders of BEST, the Brethren Ecumenical Support Trust. I'll say more about that later. And had two wonderful meals at Sister Rose's, one that evening and the next day after we worshiped at the Jamaica Church. Then after worship, we were driven to EYN headquarters at Quarry, which is at the end of the red line on the eastern side of the map. EYN headquarters is listed as either from Mubi or from Quarry. The mail comes from Mubi. It's actually about 35 kilometers away, so it's not like it's a nearby town. The other work campers on the left is Rex Miller from Goshen, Indiana. He's a retired camp director, having served at the camp in Indiana. Next is in the white cap is David Shipe from Auburn, Indiana. The Nigerian is Zachariah Musa, who's a photographer, a media person for EYN. The couple in the middle are Alex and Aurelis Sable. They are the pastors for the Spanish-speaking congregation at Lancaster, Pennsylvania. The fellow in the blue cap is Alexin Alphonse. He's from Miami, but he's been serving in Haiti for 4 years. He's a pastor there. And he's also currently the acting general secretary in Haiti, as the previous one left the position, so he's doing that for a while. And on the right is a farm boy from Kansas. Okay, some of the people involved. This is Joel Billy. He's the president of EYN. This is Salamatu Billy, his wife, and she spent an enormous amount of time guiding us and taking us on excursions and seeing that meals were provided and our needs were met. We spent a lot of time with her. This is Marcus Gamache. He was very instrumental in one of the camps, one of the IDP camps. They call them internally displaced persons camp, and we'll talk a lot about him later. This is David Ganarva. He's the leader of BEST, B-E-S-T, and they're basically a financial organization to provide financial support to EYN projects and other projects in Nigeria as well. He gets his picture here, but there were a lot of people in Yola that provided support for us in meals and stuff. A lot of fine ladies did a lot for us. Okay, the next slides will be the work site itself. I don't know if we could call this a rebuild. It's more of a continuation build. So on the left is the conference center at EYN headquarters, and the center of the picture on the right is what will be the new EYN offices. Construction got one floor done, and then the Boko Haram insurgency occurred, and that's where it stalled. So this work camp was to start resuming that construction. And we were going to put a floor on part of this and start walls building second-story walls on the other part. The walls go on the portion to the left and the floor on the portion to the right. So this was as it looked when they started. They took the first day. We did some touring the first day. They weren't quite ready for things to start, so they put the starter courses and got it laid out according to where they want rooms and so forth. And then we started carrying blocks up one flight of stairs, and carried a lot of blocks. They also carried a lot of sand. The only powered things on this site were a cement mixer and a cement vibrator. So mixing of mortar and everything was done by hand. So to mix the mortar, they start with a pile of sand, which was also carried up to this floor, throw some cement in it, start shoveling to mix it, and then eventually make a little depression, add some water, and continue mixing. A lot of back-breaking work from our perspective. On the other portion, a construction crew was there putting in rebar to provide for the pouring of this floor for the second story. The supports and boards underneath them had already been put in place, so they're putting in the rebar. Again, it's all cut and bent and placed in by hand. And we continued carrying blocks. There were 20 volunteers from local churches that came in for 2 days at a time, and included in those volunteers were some ladies. And I guess back to the first picture, they typically carried things on their head. We never carried blocks on our head, but we did towards the end carry some sand in the large walks. So we did participate in some of the Nigerian flavor of carrying things. I don't have a good picture of that. So about midweek, the walls were making pretty good progress. They couldn't put up all the exterior walls because there's an overhang, and they need to construct some supports for that outside area before they could put those walls up. This is about midweek as progress is being made, and they're getting a lot of rebar put in place. Okay, all this was leading up to the day of the pour, which was on Saturday. We were advised we wouldn't participate as the work campers. When you see the activity, you'll understand why, and we understood why. So this is where they're mixing cement. They're carrying everything to the mixer by hand. They're walk up a ramp carrying pans of wet cement, and it's dumped into wheelbarrows and taken to various places or wherever they're pouring on the floor. And to put all that into motion, and this is how it looked nearly complete. They weren't quite so energetic at the end of the day. The pour did not complete because they ran out of material for the cement. So this continued on Monday, and Monday we did get to participate, and I was happy for that. We didn't carry any cement up to the top floor, but we did carry things to the mixer and so forth. So on that morning, so most of the volunteers were there Saturday. That was the plan. So on Monday there's fewer volunteers. So at our morning gathering, the EYM president sends all his staff home, says, go home and change clothes. You get to work today too. Okay, and at the end of the week, this this is half of the top floor, and the other half is behind this picture. So they got the walls up as far as they could, and the construction crews come in on the last day we were there and begin making headers for the windows and doors at this point. So they have to put forms in for concrete and put in rebar and stuff for support for those headers. And so that was basically the end of work camp. Okay, so on Monday they weren't quite ready for us to start, so we toured the facilities at EYN headquarters. I don't have a lot of any good pictures of the current headquarters building. This is, the yellow part is one corner of it, where the dining and gathering room. You go to the left of that is an entrance and their offices. There are several other homes and buildings there for staff and visitors. And there's an elementary school on back around to the right. The main feature at the headquarters is the conference center. I might also mention that these buildings weren't destroyed by Boko Haram. They used this for their headquarters when they were there, so they didn't damage them. They trashed them thoroughly, but they didn't damage them, so that's why these buildings are there at all. Conference center, from my observation, had not returned to use again. There's some cosmetic damage from some of the mortar shells that were sent to Boko Haram by the Nigerian army as they cleared them out. This is the inside. There's seating for 5,000, I understand. So it's quite a building. Okay, other things at the headquarters is a clinic. This is sort of the current clinics in temporary buildings. They did destroy the existing clinic, and there is a new clinic under construction, but they aren't quite ready for occupancy yet. The waiting area, and there's damage to these buildings too, but they use it as best they can. So you make do with what you have under these circumstances. They have a medicine dispensary. The Muslims trust the medicine from here more than their own because they know it will work. Their supply can be hit or miss, and I can imagine several reasons for that. This is the clinic that was bombed, or the remains of it, and another building, nearby building, that was damaged from mortar too. Okay, across the road is a secondary school that would be for junior and senior high. There's several buildings there. The students that go here board at this school, and this is some of their classrooms. Again, you can see it's rather rough looking, and there is some damage there. Here in Culp Bible College, a number of windows remain broken, I imagine, either through funds or short supply of glass. These things haven't been repaired yet. I think I mentioned an elementary school. It's at EYN headquarters, or near the headquarters building. Children from staff and from a nearby village would attend here. And about a kilometer further in is Culp Bible College, and there's also a small village there. This is the offices for Culp Bible College. The gentleman on the left is the president of Culp Bible College. The other gentleman is our escort for the day, and work campers, and those two gentlemen in Salama too. The library, they would like to get away from written materials or printed materials, as that's becoming difficult to get. However, they don't have good internet access, so they're trying to come up with a way to get that. There's several ideas, but they haven't materialized yet. More classrooms. We managed to interrupt one class in our tour, so this is that class. And this is the chapel or church at Culp Bible College. The inside of that church would have been in the offertory video. Okay, on Thursday, we went to visit 3 villages. These are fairly isolated villages. To get them, you wouldn't say there was a road, it was more of a path. So this village is Gashala, and then we saw another village, Niwa, and Melende. Gashala is a Christian village, and it has an EYN church. One of our drivers had been a pastor in this area, or at this church, so quite a few people in the village came out to greet us and greet him. Note the person on the left in the orange. I'll say something about him later. Keep him in mind. Construction of homes in this part of the country is mud brick with either a thatch or a tin roof, and then the walls, or everyone has walls around their property or area. So they can either be mud brick or they might be corn stalks and cane stalks. So this mud brick wall would typify how the house walls are built also. And another shot of the people in the village. This is the UIN church, that village, so you'll see it's rather the size you'd expect in a small village. And you'll see part of the postlude video. We interrupted a Bible class here also when they did some impromptu music for us. That'll be at the tail end of that video. This is Niwa. It's a Muslim village. These are all thatch roofs. This is very remote. It's hardly even accessible by a cow path. So they're quite isolated. The pot is for water, and you can see an example of the corn stalk or cane stalk fence. And some children and some members of the village. These people communicate with other Christians. A number of our guide, who was pastor at the other village, knew all these people, so they know each other, interact with each other as much as they ever cross paths. Another shot of the children. These 2 women, their water supply is a creek nearby, so they happen to be returning from gathering water from that creek. Okay, this is Friday afternoon at the District Women's Conference. It was held in Mubi. 12 of the 13 EYN churches in Mubi were destroyed by Boko Haram bombs. So this conference is being held at the site of one of those churches that was destroyed. You can tell the exterior walls have begun reconstruction, and this is the state it was in when we were there. Again, one of the choirs. We were escorted to seats front and center like we were dignitaries, something I'm not used to. So it was quite an event. Okay, on Saturday, when the rest of the volunteers were pouring cement, we went to visit 2 cities, Wichita and Uba, and we saw sites of 5 churches that had been destroyed by Boko Haram. This is the first one in Wichita. Joel Billy was pastor at this church when they were attacked. They were having church one that Sunday, and they heard gunshots and realized what was happening, so they fled the service immediately. And that started a 4-day walk, or a 4-day trip on foot to Yola, which is about 150 kilometers through what they call the bush country, or the back country, where there's no roads and you just go cross country to get there. About 200 members of this congregation were killed in that attack. This is a bombed out Sunday school room So they currently worship in an open-air building with a tin roof, as will the other sites we see. And these are congregations of 800 to 1,000 people. Most of the rubble's been cleared, but some obviously remains. This is the second church in Wichita, and some foundation for exterior walls have started to come up. This is their open-air building they worship in. This is a site in Uba. Again, some rubble still there. Most of it's been cleared. Again, their open-air place of worship. And another site in Uba. Two of the churches in Uba have started reconstruction. These are the trenches dug to start the foundation. Okay, on the way, several things noted. When they escaped, Pastor Billy and his wife stayed in Yola for about 8 months, and then after Boko Haram was turned away, they returned. And on the way, you could tell that Boko Haram had destroyed a lot of infrastructure as well. There's a lot of the utility distribution poles were knocked down or damaged, and bridges. So in this part of Nigeria, there's no electrical service. If you have any electricity, it's from solar power or from generators. And we went over 2 bridges where they bombed the center support. So you've got one bridge support going down to the bottom where they kind of filled it in, another bridge support heading up, and it's about a 30-degree angle, and you go, oh boy. And I think we've gone over these facts before, but Boko Haram destroyed like 12 to 1,600 Iwayan churches. Both Muslims and Christians left the area, pretty much everybody. Unless you intended to pledge allegiance to Boko Haram, you were killed. So they left. Okay, so you saw how the walls looked at about the end of our work camp. That was on Tuesday. Then on Wednesday, we slowly began the process of making our way home. Wednesday, we drove from EYN headquarters to Yola. Roy Winter happened to be there attending some meetings, and he was with us for a couple days after that. On Thursday, we flew back to Abuja, and on Friday, we visited the IDP camp. There, we met Marcus Gamache. He pretty much single-handedly established his camp, or certainly got it started. Family ties are strong in Nigeria, so if you need help, you go to family. Marcus had about 50 family members staying in his 3-bedroom house, so he had to come up with another solution, and this camp was his solution. So he had some land on the outskirts of Abuja. Outskirts is a generous description. So Abuja is it's a big city. It's a capital. So in the main part of the city, it's just like the city here, buildings and commerce and everything, and paved roads. And as you go to the outskirts of the city, things become smaller. The streets are paved, but all the stores and stuff are alongside the streets in small buildings, one right next to each other. Then the streets have become unpaved, and the stores smaller and more like shacks. And then before you get to this camp, you're going over non-existent roads. It's just bumpy and twisty and turny, and tosses you all over the place to get there. So then you arrive at the camp. So Marcus had his family members there, and then grew this camp to include other, you might say, internal refugees. So it's pretty well established. On the left is a guest home that they provides them a little bit of income. In the center, the shiny roofs are the homes for widows. Just to the right of center is the church that was financed by a one EYN member. And then on the far right is the start of the houses. There are about 100 homes or houses there, both Muslim and Christian. And this shows a little bit more of the houses. To get a home, you have to build 1,300 mud blocks. And this is from the other end, again showing homes. If I had some pictures of the inside, there would be the corn stalk or cane stalk fences and create more privacy around the home. So each homeowner has had to do something to enhance their surroundings a little bit. Where they cook is just an open fire in one corner of the structure, usually outside. There are about 1,000 people in these 100 homes, 600 of which are children. I think there's a waiting list of 75, they said. And other buildings there, they're constructing schools, a school building. There's a Montessori school that's an independent effort. These are more of the school buildings. Until they have those buildings, I think there's one other small building they do have school in, but they basically have school outside. They have a medical clinic, which is funded by a Swiss organization. They have several things they do to acquire some skills to generate income for themselves, or a skill that they can use it when they leave the camp. Or I should say, they don't no longer call it a camp, it's more permanent, so they call it Gurku, and they call it an interfaith community because both Christians and Muslims live there in harmony. So this is a sewing center. They can learn sewing skills. There's agriculture, there's chickens and vegetables and fish. This is one of the fish ponds, and the widows tend to the chickens and the fish ponds. They grow yams, which look more like small logs. This is the solar-powered well and the water distribution center. Okay, there's other things planned. Okay, for large families get a 3-room house, and they may have 11 or more, as many as 11 or more members. 2-room houses are for smaller families. Other plans include soccer fields and a mosque, but they're awaiting funding. Okay, next are some slides of churches that we worshiped at. This is the Jefferson Church at Yola, before the congregation has come. And this is what it looks like when they are exiting. They generally sit men and women separately. It's not totally that way. They love their choirs. I think at Colt Bible College there were 6 different choirs sang while we were there. This is the altar at Jefferson. This is Colt Bible College, the altar, and as well as the rest of the building. And this is the church in Abuja where we worshiped the last Sunday we were there. This is the entrance. The inside, it's in a cross shape, and this is the center with its balcony. Okay, some pictures of the general countryside. It's generally flat. This was the dry season, and it was really dry. There are scattered trees on the terrain. As dry as it was, generally I could see ridges where row crop or where crops had been grown. And there were buildings and villages scattered. Occasionally there's rock outcroppings, as in this picture, and cattle. This time of year, there was no vegetation except near a river where there's some irrigation for vegetables. This is summary of pictures of the two kinds of structures, the tin roofs and the thatch roofs. And you see a bundle of the cane stalks or corn stalks. And this would be where there are some structures alongside the road between villages. It's a picture of the commerce that occurs alongside the street. Small buildings, you get whatever they sell, from tires to motorcycles to vegetables. This is a vegetable stand. The log-looking things in the middle are the yams I mentioned. The red is tomatoes. Okay, observations and reflections. Their worship was joyous and enthusiastic, and their lives were joyous and enthusiastic. They were exceptional hosts. Worship, and really everywhere, was very colorful with the Nigerian women's dresses. Local volunteers were enthusiastic and young, almost all in their 20s, which meant they could work much better than we could. About half were masons and spent their time laying blocks and hand mixing mortar. The others moved blocks and sand as we did. The hat on the altar here was a gift from EYN. I gave the signed banner from this congregation to them as we were leaving, and they gave me the hat in return. I don't know the significance of the hat, but it's obviously something native Nigeria. So with that banner, you have a presence in the EYN headquarters. They were very appreciative of it. EYN are faithful to nonviolence and non-retaliatory response. They pray for the victims and the terrorists. They are very praising of God. They very much appreciate U.S. Church of the Brethren support and our prayers, and ask for continued prayers. They received us very enthusiastically and saw us as representing the support received from the Church of the Brethren. From my perspective, the provisions in this part of the country are adequate but minimal. They make do with what they have. Also, from my perspective, there's less to distract their faithful lives than, say, mine, especially mine. And their faith is very present and expressed. I've said when I'm on a Brethren Disaster Ministries trip that it's a combination of religious retreat and vacation, since I'm away from all the things that usually occupy my life. When I worked on homes in the Indian reservation near Liebrook, it's one step beyond that, as there's no cell phone service except the mornings and evenings at the mission. Nigeria was one step beyond that, as away from the hotels in the bigger cities, there was no internet access. I could text a little, but no email, so I was really away from all the user parts of my life. EYN Nigeria people were a blessing to me. I doubt I provided as much to them at the work camp as they provided me with meals and transportation and support. Their determination is an inspiration, their faith is an inspiration, and their recovery is an inspiration. Their adherence to love your enemy is an inspiration. Thank you, EYN Nigeria.